I'd like to call to order the Town Commission Workshop meeting of April the 12th, 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompak,
Here?
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender,
I'm here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, that brings us to public comment, and we have one public comment, Chris Creedon.
Not wasting any time tonight.
It's drive-through.
Yeah, perfect. All right. My name is Chris Creedon, 176 South Sewalls Point Road. Been here one time before, talked to a few of you about this. I'm about 3 years in the process of trying to permit a roof over our boathouse. Can get into detail about the ebb and flow of that whole process. It's been anywhere from being on the consent agenda to a variance hearing to how do we reword the ordinance. We're going to look at rewording the ordinance to, I missed a few meetings and, trying to see where I saw this was on the agenda. April was kind enough to add me to the communication email chain because I was not on that. So I'd like to make the case. I sent her all her information again. We've got all the permits required except for anything from the town. We've got our DEP permit, Army Corps permit, seagrass study for the DEP, everything done. Just trying to get a decision, I guess, from the commission. That's where we're at. I don't feel like the original conversation I had 9 months, a year ago, when I tried to rejuvenate this process, was to understand the spirit of the ordinance. And I assumed the spirit of the ordinance was to maintain quality of life, maintain people's property values, maintain views. I don't think we have an issue there. When I had to come to the variance board, we had to notify everybody that had the potential to be impacted. Out of 9, I believe, notifications, I had 2 people come talk in support of our project and 1 neighbor sent an email in opposition to it. So that's I just wanted to come and see if there was an opportunity to voice my case and see if there's a way that you guys would consider a process to where this could be judged on a case by case or judged on its merits, to where it didn't have negative impacts, not to just where it was a blanket ordinance and it's a no because we live on the east side of the island. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the only public comment I have. Do we have a consensus on the agenda?
Yep. I'll move to accept as written.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
I believe there's no role in the workshop, but there's a consent.
No roll? Okay, well then I guess we're good to move along.
I guess
Everybody's
we
okay with the
asked for-
agenda?
oh.
All right, the next item is town attorney request for a closed-door session. You're right on time.
Sorry about that. A little more traffic. Pursuant to Section 280, I have to read all of this, I'm sorry about that. Pursuant to Section 286.011, Friends 8 Bar Statutes, I'm requesting advice from the Town Commission concerning pending litigation, specifically regarding settlement negotiations and strategy related to litigation expenditures in case of, first case is 21-0002 AP AXMX Anthony R. Lagana and Arlene E. Lagana, appellant versus Town of Sewalls Point Code Enforcement Board and Town Manager Michelle Berger. And 2, case number 43, 2021 AP 0004 APA XMX Anthony R. Lagana and Arlene Lagana, appellant versus Town of Sewalls Point, both in the Circuit Court of the 19th Judicial Circuit and for Martin County. And I'm requesting an attorney-client session to be scheduled for today, April 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or as soon as the 5:30 p.m. Commission workshop meeting ends. Session will be attended by members of the Town Commission, Mayor John Tompeck, Dave Kurtzman, Vice Mayor, James Campo, Commissioner, Frank Fender, Commissioner, Kaya Mayfield, Commissioner, Interim Town Manager Dave Hudson, and myself, Glenn Torcivia.
Thank you very much. Is there anything you need to add to that?
The second page, certified court reporter. will be-
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's a long one. To ensure it's fully transcribed and the transcript made public upon the conclusion of the above cited ongoing litigation, the estimated length of this session will be about 30 minutes, and it's closed to the public.
Okay.
I'm done talking for the night, that's
Is
it.
nothing else you need to add to that? Okay. All right, so we'll meet the meeting after we're finished with the workshop. That brings us down to discussion items. The first discussion item is revisions to the Marine Structures Code. Mr. Hudson.
Yes, sir. As you are aware, as Mr. Creedon commented, the town has been talking about this for a while, and before I came to the town even. So we've put together some suggestions here that it's been kind of comments from a number of people, commissioners, members of the public, various, the attorney and I have talked several times, and the building officials and I have talked several times. So it's kind of a combination of ideas from several sources. But a couple of things I'd like you to, the central issue is that what we're suggesting is that we look at the way of addressing those existing non-conforming uses that are on the east side of the peninsula. And what I'm suggesting is that you kind of divide it into two paths. One would be, how do we deal with the ones that are already built? And then secondly, once we have a direction on that, then we would take up the case of what do we do about the future, and what kind of application process, what kind of standards we might want to consider, if anything. So that's what I've been suggesting at this point. So, so we've given you some draft language. I did a look at the history of the Marine Structures Code. It's not new. This is, commissioners have made comments that, about previous commissions that have come before us, and it's been addressed multiple times over the years. Since 1978, it's been in effect and has been amended at least a half a dozen times in that 45-year period. So it does seem as if we've got a collective view from the commission now about moving forward. So I am going to suggest that as we consider it, that we have some guiding principles. In other words, we're kind of dealing in an abstraction here, where we're talking about things a situation that doesn't exist. And so I'd like you to have some guiding principles. And the first on the list is compliance. And these are not necessarily in order, but compliance is important. We do have a situation where people have built structures that are not allowed. And so the town has a history and a reputation, and prides itself even on the regulation of what can and can't be done in the town. So that's an important factor of the very culture of the town. So safety, of course, is an issue. We need to have the roofs meeting wind loads. Seagrass protection is an ongoing concern. That's something we're all concerned about and want to maintain. And then there's also this concept of value, property values, and aesthetic enhancement. What do we see? We're a waterfront community, Sewalls Point is, and so you almost want to shape this into a vision, if you will. So, and then education is an important part. We need to be educating not just our citizens, but we need to be educating the marine construction industry, because there is a marine association on the Treasure Coast, and we could compile a list of contractors and send them notices reminding them that if you do work in the town that a permit is required. And at least one previous speaker in prior commission meetings has said that they've been almost misled, if you will, by the contractors. So anyway, enough of that. So that's the big picture. Let's look at the language that we're talking about. Again, we're focusing on the existing roofs, and so what we're suggesting is that in order to address the existing roofs that have been built. Um, The first step is let's look at the ones that basically have their permits, both a DEP permit and a town permit. And those are the ones, and I think I said two in the article, in the report, but it could be any number because it's always possible that someone has a town permit. They may also have an FDEP permit that we simply don't know about. So we need to let that number be flexible. But basically, the idea under paragraph A is that if they're in existence on a date certain, we can change the date, whatever date the commission decides, but on a date certain, then, and they have a town permit and they have an FDEP permit, then we would issue a special permit for those singularities, so. The second paragraph basically declares them to be non-conforming, anybody which does not have both permits. Now, this is almost redundant because they are in fact non-conforming already, but it does grant a little bit of protection if you choose to do that in the sense that it's a recognized non-conformity, so it kind of goes into the record, so to speak. Part C then would be those people who don't have all of their permits, the DEP and the town. And so if the commission wishes to do so, you could create this special permit process, which would have certain standards. One would be that they have to get a DEP permit. They would contribute $500 into a seagrass mitigation fund, which would go to support education and the like. They've also paid $500 as a fine for constructing a roof without a permit. That is the actual penalty right now on the code, that if someone does it without a permit. And then that the building official was allowed to do an inspection if that has not been done already. So that would be paragraph C, and then paragraph D addresses those who have a roof, but they choose to do nothing. Okay, and so at some point in time, you might want to take a more affirmative action, to enforce those. So each one of these is a policy choice. I would, maybe as a suggestion, I would start with each one, A, and just kind of give guidance to staff. If we're able to move forward from this point in a particular direction, then the next step would be to come back with actual language in an ordinance, which would be most likely very similar to this, but more in ordinance format. So that would be my suggestion, is take one section at a time, A, B, C, D. So.
Okay, we have any, well, I have a couple of questions. It seemed, as I was reading this, that is this strictly talking about the east side, or does it include the west side as well?
We're only looking at the east side because right now I'm suggesting we only look at those that are basically non-conforming at this point, so.
Okay.
The ones on the west side are conforming.
Okay, and you also talked a little bit about here that the Indian River Lagoon is classified as both an outstanding Florida water and aquatic preserve, giving it special regulatory status. Can somebody explain to me exactly what that might mean?
Let me see.
It's in your second paragraph of your executive summary.
Okay, I also attached the FDEP. This is a brochure from DEP that describes their permitting process. So if you look at this first area up in here where I'm moving the cursor, it's in outstanding Florida waters. They can have up to 500 square feet of over water surface area and one private dock. What that means, that counts the steps going out, the landing at the end of the dock, and also any roofing structure would all have to be under 500 square feet. And then in canals and outside the outstanding Florida waters, so if you look at the map of the outstanding Florida waters, basically, if a property fronts on the Indian River Lagoon, it's an outstanding Florida water. If it's on one of the interior canals or any of the protected areas inside, then it's not an outstanding Florida water. So this category would be what we would be looking at, and they can go up to 1,000 square feet of over surface water area and one private dock. So those are the two main distinctions, is the sizing.
Because I'm still thinking a little bit about the problem with somebody on the east side who wants to put up any kind of a roof. It's still going to be significantly higher than his elevation. And have we done anything about, giving them a chance for a variance?
Well, what
At
I'm
least evaluate your
suggesting, yeah,
variance.
what I'm suggesting is that we address that in future iterations of the same topic. In other words, let's deal with the ones that are out there now first, and then we will move forward into setting standards for those that may be built in the future, or not built as the commission determines.
So I was wondering, as I read this, and you're talking about the tentative draft policy language, you got any marine roof in existence as of June 1st, 2022. I know that that date is whatever we want it to be, but could somebody between now and then pull a permit to add a roof on the east side for their dock?
No, it's not allowed presently.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what we're,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, just in reference to your question about the aquatic preserve, I'm under the understanding, maybe you're getting to it, or maybe I have it wrong, but the aquatic preserve is part of the outstanding water, and it's more strict. They have more, I believe, isn't that the second page?
We can go on, yeah.
They have more oversight, and that's the Indian River Lagoon is an aquatic preserve, but the St. Lucie River is not an aquatic preserve. I believe that is correct.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's another distinction between the east side and the west side.
okay, because the mayor, you were asking about the aquatic preserve
Yeah.
aspect too. So I think the FDEP already gives it some extra oversight compared to the Indian River Lagoon, that is. That's it. That's what I'm.
Mr. Campo.
Well, I want to thank the town manager for breaking this down, because I know folks like Chris have been caught in a quagmire, and frankly, the commission, or myself, just didn't know how to untangle it. So there were so many variations and different aspects, it was difficult to take a step back. And so I agree with the way that we are trying to break it down and focus right now on the non-conforming existing, just try to, eat the elephant one bite at a time. I think kind of an overarching theme that I have is that as far as the seagrass and what's over the water, if the DEP has approved it, then I think that should supersede what the town of Sewalls Point might do. I don't think that we should try to overmanage the state agency. DEP is, it stands for, right? Don't expect permit. So when you finally do get a permit, it's hard earned, and people have got to go through a lot of work. And if folks like Chris go through the work of the permits, then I don't think, as much as I think highly of Jack, I don't think we should add that burden to him to try to second guess that as far as the seagrass is concerned. And I think, if we want to portray the Mayberry way of life, we need to be understanding, especially with folks who recently have had, these things arise between building officials, because there's some disagreement between maybe how one building official does it versus the other, and we've had COVID, we've had a change in management, and I think that there should be some latitude given to folks that are caught in the situation that Chris has. And I think we want to be good neighbors and still, present and or preserve the codes that we have. So I definitely do not want us to get in the, minutia of the seagrass when we've got a state agency that that's, sole purpose is protecting that environment. Now, there was one comment made earlier that you made, Dan, that you said that all roofs on the east side are currently non-conforming. Is that what you said?
I believe that to be the case. I mean, I without personally going out and looking at every one.
So,
Why do you say that? I'm
so every dock that has a roof on it on the east side is not conforming with what? I mean,
Our code.
Yeah, it's above the elevation of the land.
okay, so it's not the seagrass aspect?
No.
Correct.
Okay, okay. All right, and, okay, when we did the sign ordinance, back in my old age, when I did the sign ordinance, it literally took us a year. And so if you want to spend, 2 or 3 meetings discussing the color of the roof and, the shape and, whether it should be, diagonal decorations or lateral, you can. But I'm just telling you, the more you chew off, the longer this is going to take, the more frustrating it's going to be. The only last thing I'll say is that I think we need to look closely at C, where it says if someone makes an application for the special permit, I think that if for some reason they're not given those permits, that the later date, the December 1st date, we might have a little bit more wiggle room on. As long as people are venturing to correct the problem and have their paperwork in by December 1st, I think we should be a little bit more forgiving on when the process is concluded. That's all.
Commissioner Fender.
So I've given this thing a lot more thought from the last couple of times we've talked, and I don't know if it was an epiphany or what, but I drive to Vero Beach twice a month for a meeting. And a lot of times I take the island, but when I can, I take Indian River Drive. And so, I think I've positioned stated my position on this related to not wanting to change the ordinance of the past, just because smart people before me set the rules the way they set them, and it's my job to maintain that persistence. But I think I'm softening on that position a little bit. I don't think I'm as far as you just said, where we don't care willy-nilly, put any dock you want, regardless if the DEP stamps it, we let it go. I may not be that far along, but I would say that my entire position has always been about property values in Sewalls Point. And to me, docks increase property values for residents and even non-dock owners in Sewalls Point. And as I drove down Indian Riverside Drive between here and Fort Pierce, I passed hundreds of docks of different sizes and shapes. Some of them were dilapidated and broken down. Many of them met the standards of the docks that we would put into an ordinance that would meet all the criteria you specified here articulately. So I think the path you're on, I'm in favor of the path you're on for the non-conforming, but I'm now focused on making life easier for people who want docks in the future, to not have to go through a 3-year process to get them if they meet the criteria that we set forth as safe and mitigating seagrass and all the things that we say. That's fine. But I don't think that's too difficult to do. And by the way, the view part, to me, the dock is an attractive part of our community. I'm not trying to hide them. I don't believe that tiny dock, as far apart as our setbacks are, is really blocking the view of the ocean for the people in the community. I mean, if we have if there is a variance process that says a neighbor is complaining about this, I'm all for letting people complain about a permit going through and blocking that. But I don't see why we would be standing in the way of docks, which increase property values for our residents. So I'm in favor of moving it forward. I'm in favor of putting this fine point on people who did not follow the process. I think if there's something punitive there, that makes sense. You should follow the process, and we have ordinance for a reason. But also, the spirit of the ordinance, as Mr. Creedon articulated, is that we're trying to make it aesthetically pleasing and increase our property values. So I'll be favoring whatever action that is, including what you've articulated here, but going even farther to make the ordinance that we currently have more easy to participate in, and making life better for boater owners and dock owners and property owners on the east and west sides. I don't see any difference between the two, and I don't believe that they're an eyesore, so.
Mr. Kurzman.
I guess I'm the odd man out, but in this, I feel we've had scientists, doctors, we had Jackie Thurlow-Lipich, who was appointed by the governor for the environment, and they all said, don't do it. And they're a lot smarter than we are when it comes to this, and I have to go by what they said. They have degrees hanging on their walls. I don't have a degree that states that on my wall. When we all ran for office, every one of us said we're going to protect the environment. No exceptions. I've read all of your literature. And now we're going to turn around and go against what environmentalists told us not to do. We're just going to give it up. I mean, I just had a discussion with a couple of friends of mine that live on the river, and I explained why I had position. And, at first they didn't understand after talking to them, and I actually made them listen to the videos that had to play back on here in Seagrass. And I go, you're going to have to sit through it like I did. I want you to watch it. And when they're done, they understood. They're not happy about it, but they do get it. And we're trying to protect manatees. We just, and as I said, the last meeting, we had a record number of manatees die, and they're starving. And we're trying to really keep Sewalls Point. We have our own rules here. It doesn't matter with the EPA. We're our own town. We have our own set of rules. The EPA doesn't make our rules. Just next thing after this, it's going to be people want to have campers because they don't want to store their campers. Let's keep those in the front. Then they're going to keep their trailers in the front. And then they're going to say, why can't I keep my trailer to store my family in there? Well, they're vacationing. Where's it going to stop? And, but this has a lot to do with environment and, the beautification of the town. I feel if you already got your 2 permits from us and the DEP, can't do anything at that point. I know we could, but I don't think we should. I don't think you should give somebody a permit, then pull it back. I'm not in favor of that. And I feel $500 is a joke. We had somebody that just built a lot over on Mandalay, and they just tore down like a forest back there. And they basically told our building inspector, put the 5,000 on my tab, I'll take another one down. And I'm going to take these down, even if 5,000 is nothing and they've taken out a forest at 5,000 a tree. What's $500? That's chicken scratch when you live on the water. So, the $500 part is really a big joke. $500 for seagrass mitigation. We were told $500 is going to this is $500 worth of seagrass, the size of this paper. That's nothing. Maybe you want to talk 50,000, 25,000. I'm just having a tough time with this, and I do feel for the people that live on the Indian River Lagoon, but at the same time, I'm an environmental person, and the environment comes first. And just like I told my friends, I hope this doesn't hurt our friendship, and it didn't. At the end, we had a nice discussion, and they understood where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult, and I hate saying no to people, especially when they're neighbors and friends, but I'm sticking by this one. That's my opinion on that.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes. This topic, as has been discussed, has been frustrating and going on for a while, but it's been good. And after the last meeting in particular, I dove in a little bit more into some of the environmental stuff because I too support the environment. But I had said in the past that I'm open to removing the restriction to allow roof covers or boat covers on the east side. And I looked into it, and I watched the Rivers Coalition meeting, and I brought in some fun pamphlets for the town on the Indian River Lagoon Coastal Community Report Card. And the seagrass situation is bad, as we were shown. But the interesting thing is they're not really sure now why it's not growing back, because the water quality is improving and the grass is not growing back. So there are a lot of issues going on. And to your point about the environment, that is one of the reasons I I support septic to sewer so much. I mean, think about I've always had those properties on the east side. You know, that is probably affecting, this is my opinion, the river more than the de minimis difference between the cover on the boat versus what is already there for the boat in an area where the seagrass is already struggling or not even there. So the septic to sewer, the stormwater, they're not sure why the grass is not growing back. They're thinking maybe there's some kind of toxins. Think of all the toxins that go into our septic tanks, our detergent and whatnot. Anyways, we could go on in that. So the subject was good to understand that stuff. And for the ones that are existing with the permits, I feel for them. They got a town permit, that's legit. The ones that don't, unless we can all agree, which maybe I've kind of heard, that we would be willing to change that height rule, because that's really the heart of the matter here is that height rule. That if we're not going to change that, then I would only support the kind of ordinance change that would allow the people that got the town permits to keep it and then not be able to rebuild it if there was a problem. Because I think if we're going to have the height restriction, we need to stick to it and enforce the ordinance as our laws dictate. And if we're open to changing it, then provide more loopholes in the meantime for the people who have the covers before we get to the point of actually changing it. So that is where I stand.
Commissioner Fender.
I just want to reply to Commissioner Kurzman. Nothing about what I said was in detriment to the environment. I believe what we have is a DEP that is supposed to be protecting our seagrass, and I'm not looking at the dollar figure. We can make the dollar figure whatever you want. I'm saying that we should mitigate the seagrass issue, and that should be part of the equation, but not at the expense of what are already existing docks. And it's not like we're going to blacken the sea with docks. You know, seagrass is still going to grow, and manatees are still going to be protected, and I assume we're still going to pay the DEP to protect them. And if the DEP has given a stamp of approval, I don't know that we're the environmental agency to block that. What we are the agency to block is the aesthetics of what we want our town to look like after the DEP says environmentally it's okay for you to have a dock. After the environment is mitigated and everybody says that this dock will not harm manatees or seagrass, then we should say it should be an aesthetically pleasing structure that will bring up the property value of the town. That's my position. So I just want to be clear that I am not at all in favor of impacting the environment. I don't believe that we are, first, and I also believe we can overcome it for the tiny minuscule amount of impact we're having. The DEP is charged with making sure we do not negatively impact it, and I trust them in their activity. I'm not an expert.
Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, real quick. I listened to all the scientists talk about seagrass is good, seagrass is good, seagrass is good. No one asked them, and they made no statements about cover docks. That was not a question that anyone asked, and they did not answer. So I don't know where you got that. The dock is covering a boat. The boat is already shading the seagrass underneath it. It's just maybe some extra protection. So the dock is already there. It's just a matter of, you know, maybe it's a triangular, you know, square footage, and now it's a rectangular square footage. But, you know, we do want to protect seagrass, there's no question. But I don't think I remember any scientist that came here saying and weighing in on this decision. And I was kind of surprised that it was such a kind of meandering decision that never really got to the heart of the matter, that what we were trying to do is look at the boat ordinance.
And you recall that I specifically asked the question to the expert, what is causing the problem with seagrass? And we couldn't get a definitive answer on that. Commissioner Mayfield.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I think it gets confusing in conversation that we're saying docks, dock cover, like docks are already all allowed, and they follow that per the pamphlet, the little handout we had for the aquatic preserve on the Indian River Lagoon. They have to follow all those criteria, and they do allow docks covers per that same criteria if they don't go over like 1 foot beyond whatever. But so really, we're just talking about the covers. Like I know sometimes we're saying docks, but we already allow docks all over the Indian River Lagoon.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, going back, it was Jackie Thurl-Lipich specifically, when she came in, she said it's the dock covers. She did say that. She goes, putting this will kill more seagrass. Seagrass needs sunlight. If anything's blocking the seagrass from sunlight, it will die, it will not survive. And the people that came in here also said it does thrive with the sun. The sun's a very important part of seagrass. And the other thing is, we are protecting, when we're raising the road and stuff, that's definitely going to help a lot, because the stormwater is not going to be running into the River Lagoon once we finish this project. That's also going to be another big help when we do that. We're going in the right direction with the projects we're doing. It's just going forward and keeping what we have. You know, maybe years down, this could be revisited, but I don't think now's the time. It's something it's a slippery slope, and once you commit to something, it's going to look like you have tulips growing off of every one of the docks. And eventually, I mean, I don't see what the problem is. I mean, I have collector cars. When I take them home, when I take them from the warehouse, I'll put a cover over them. I've collected cars now for over 30 years. And when I bring them in, I'll put a cover over them. Even if I keep it at the house for weeks at a time, then I'll bring it back to the warehouse if the weather's going to be inclement or whatever. But one of the things I've always done, I mean, I don't see why you just don't throw a cover that protects the, you know, whether it's a boat or a car. And, you know, I've had some very valuable cars historically, and I don't see the big deal of needing to have the canopy.
Commissioner Fender.
I don't believe we're on a slippery slope here, and I think the spirit of this ordinance is about height, and that is what's impacting all of the decisions here. It's not about whether you build the dock, how you build it, although we should have pretty specific requirements to that. But I think the issue is height of the land, and what's making these docks non-conforming is that this is the low side of the island, and you can see the dock as you stand on the side of the river. And to me, I don't find it aesthetically unpleasing. So that's just my point. I think the ordinance, the eyesore part of this ordinance is probably what's holding us up and probably what we should fix.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I was going to ask, you know, I'm thinking about how to move forward to separating it out. I told you mine are a little bit contingent. You know, I don't necessarily think until the ordinance is, you know, is done or agreed upon that we should allow someone to get a new permit for something that is not allowed. That doesn't make sense in my head, you know, unless we were all, you know, on board to change it or whatever. Can you, and also, will you re-summarize this in just layman's terms about in terms of the 5 that are out of compliance? Are you?
Paragraph A would allow the commission to, if you would change the ordinance, obviously, would allow the commission to issue a special permit for those roofs that have both a DEP and a town permit. That would be paragraph A. Paragraph B is a little bit redundant because it basically declares any others that don't have both permits to be non-compliant. Technically, they're non-compliant already, so. Paragraph C creates a window of opportunity for those people who have roofs but don't have both permits to become compliant by following these steps. That would be paragraph C. I want to point out in paragraph C, that does not address Mr. Creedon's situation because he does not have a roof. So that's that, you know, if you want to consider that, you would tweak that slightly to allow people to make application during this window of time. And then paragraph D is really just, you know, that's going to be the moving forward. If there's still some non-compliant roofs out there, then we're going to be faced with, do we go through the enforcement mechanisms that you have at your disposal, which there are several ways of going about that if we get to that point.
I'll hold mine. You can cancel mine.
Did that help a little bit?
It did. I appreciate that.
Are you
Commissioner
done?
Campo.
Are you done, Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I just wanted to get it, I'm thinking about, yeah, I'm done, thank you.
Well, I'm thinking along the same lines that you are. How do we kind of merge this traffic here? And I would say that I'm in favor of A, B, and C, and I'm also in favor of allowing people to make application during this time period. They call it amnesty sometimes when there's things that are out of, yeah.
And let me make sure I'm clear on this. Does that mean that somebody on the east side can apply for a permit that would have a roof?
Yes.
Okay. Just a couple of quick items, and I'm listening to everybody, and I agree with most of what's being said. I think it's important that we depend on the DEP to do their job. I don't think we want Jack with the scuba gear out there doing seagrass surveys. I don't think that's going to work. So, you know, I don't think there's necessarily anything that we need to do above and beyond what the DEP is requiring. And I don't, quite frankly, I don't look at this as a slippery slope, because it's a very specific issue. And I think Commissioner Fender hit it on the head here, is that this is really more of an aesthetic issue that we're talking about. So I think, unless I know we don't have a unanimous verdict on this, but it sounds like the majority of the commission would like you to go ahead and tentatively go ahead and draft up the policy. And before we go on that, I guess Commissioner Fender has
Well,
a few
isn't
more
it,
words.
I like where you were going, but isn't this a two-phased process? One is the things that we're talking about here that I think Commissioner Camp articulated pretty well, which we can make a motion and move forward with if we want. But part two of this is really fixes the problem, which is fixing the wording of the ordinance that is the aesthetic problem you described.
Right.
And, you know, I told the town manager and I told the town attorney a couple weeks ago that I felt strongly enough about this now that I was willing to sponsor an ordinance change if, you know, if that's what was required. I haven't seen your wording, but.
We're always looking for
That was-
volunteers. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. But I'm just saying I'll accept the motion or second it or something for what we have here, but I'm really more interested in the follow-on.
All right, so I think what you're saying is, in addition to the tentative draft policy language that's identified in the agenda item, that we would both like to see something that has, or we'd all like to see something, with the possible exception of Vice Mayor Kurzman, that talks about the dock roofs on the east side. Okay,
Can I add one quick,
Commissioner Mayfield.
I was gonna,
Consensus, I think it would be fine. I don't know that we necessarily need a motion at this point. I kind of hear what everybody's understanding. The main distinction between moving forward now and working on the big picture is, I think we can do a quick fix for the two, if you want, or the A, B, C, D, if you will. And the ones under D that don't, you know, if they know that the commission is moving forward to reevaluate the whole, they may just wait and see what happens and see if they come out on the other side with the ability to do something, move forward with a roof in the future. So what I'm hearing you say is that, what I'm suggesting that we do is that we do a quick fix for the ones that are A, B, and C, and then at the same time initiate the process for evaluating the big picture. I think that's going to take a little bit longer, because you're going to get into aesthetics, you're going to get into styles, and are they allowed in canals, are they not allowed in canals, you know, are they allowed on the riverside, you know, there's a lot of policy embedded in that bigger picture decision,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm suggesting.
The only
had-
caveat, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I had,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. It was quick, the $500 for seagrass mitigation. I believe you said what are you thinking there? You said where is the seagrass mitigation, the $500 going? You were going to look into that? Is that, refresh my memory on what you said with that item?
I'm aware that actual mitigation
It's
is
difficult.
not really a proven science, that they've had difficulty establishing seagrass beds through mitigation. So it would be more likely to be directed toward an education and research effort, I think would be a
Right.
better use of the funds, so.
Okay,
And
I
I
was just,
think right across the river here, they
they do a good job.
yeah, they do have a fund, and
Yeah,
from what I understand, they've planted some seagrass beds up on Moores Creek and in Fort Pierce, and it's costing them about $50,000 an acre, and that includes the planting of the grass and also the maintenance, and you know, they go there over the course of 3 or 4 years to see how it's doing, to transplant it, whatever. So $500 is just a number that I tossed out. It could be more, whatever the commission thinks. It's just a number I tossed out. Commissioner Fender.
So I like the progress we were making, but now that we've made that progress, I'd like to put a caveat in it, is that I didn't want anything that I said to take away from the fact that if somebody knowingly violated the permit and didn't try to follow the process, that's a different story entirely. And I'll add to the second part of that caveat is that I believe $500 is sort of ridiculous on mitigation. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I don't, and I'm more interested in planting more seagrass, right? So however that our calculus comes out, I'm in favor of that, but I think $500 is.
Dan, maybe you could give the folks over at FOS a call and
Yeah,
tell
I
them
can
what
do
we're
that.
thinking
Sure.
about and see if they can come up with what they think would be a.
That's
Yeah,
smart
okay,
to do.
all right. Yeah, I can do that.
Vice Mayor Kurtzman.
Can I make a suggestion? You say 50,000 for an acre. Why not plant a quarter acre of seagrass, which would be $12,500? And if people are spending all this money, $12,500 is not, it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money considering what we're giving up in our ordinance and everything, and it's allowing somebody to go forward and do this. At the same time, you're protecting the manatees, and it's,
I like where your heart is, but I think we should let a scientist tell us.
Yeah, and let's let Mr. Hudson,
Florida Oceanographic Society.
yeah, let's let them see what they suggest would be good.
Yeah, well, we can be in touch with them for sure, yeah.
Okay. All right, do you have enough direction on that to,
I think so, actually, yes. I think we can move forward.
right.
I think the big takeaway, if I could, just to recap, is just that we don't want to just look at the ones that are out there now, but let's create an ongoing process to look at the big picture, so, okay.
And I'm sorry to ask one question. When drafting this up, under letter C, and then underneath that, it says the owner is going to make application for a special permit prior to December 1st. Do we want to have a deadline for receiving the permit? Because I could put Mickey Mouse on my application. Is that, you want it to be actually receiving a permit by that day or receiving it by within a month after that? Because again, if someone submits an application that is just, and I don't see that happening, but.
So are you back to B where it says the permit needs to be June 1st?
No, on letter C, which says the owner of a non-conforming roof may make application for a special permit prior to December 1st, 2022. So we're basically giving everybody, other than the first two people, the chance to file an application, correct, Dan?
Yes.
And do they have some time which they must receive that permit? Because what if there's some reason, just making the application, what if the application is deficient? And so,
Could it be as simple as inserting the word valid, making a valid, or a complete application?
thank you. Okay.
Complete is, I think, the terminology that's often used on applications, so.
And then if someone doesn't do either of these things, if you're one of those 3 people or so that don't go DEP, don't come to the town, I'm assuming at that point, after December 1st, they would be in violation and code would start. Okay.
Section 62-151.
Yeah.
That's what I just wanted to make clear, we all know that that's the potential outcome if someone doesn't do any of these very reasonable solutions.
And the key to this is some education, so we need to somehow notify these folks so that once December 1st, 2022 comes around, people don't walk in and say, hey, I had no idea, because that's where we always seem to get in trouble, so.
Yeah, education needs to be an important part of the process, not just with these folks, but with the entire marine construction industry as well, so, and the residents.
okay, that brings us to 5B, 7 Heritage Way, consideration of sale. Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, give me a second, okay. This first came to your attention June a year ago. The question was brought up of selling the property. Recently, you asked us to kind of recap it and come back to you with some suggestions. The property It's just a little over a third of an acre on, well, obviously it's 7 Heritage Way, so it's not in a flood zone. It was platted in the late 1980s. There was an initiative in late 1998 and 99 where the town went out and solicited a number of properties, and some of those are now storm retention areas. This one was bought in that time period, but it doesn't seem to be suitable for storm retention because it's halfway up the hill, and so it's never been used for storm retention. In fact, almost immediately after the purchase, it was rezoned to PS1, which is what your normal designation is for like a park. So right now, it's maintained as on the same schedule as the retention areas. The grass is mowed once a month, and that's pretty much all that is done to it. To our knowledge, the tree itself has not been maintained. There's a tree on it that I need to mention. So anyway, let me just kind of go down just a few items that you need to be thinking about as we do this. I think the first step would be to declare it surplus. You make a determination that it is no longer needed. You know, it hasn't served a particular purpose other than green space, I'll say, since it was acquired. The other step that would need to be taken before you attempt to sell it would be a rezoning. It would need to be changed from PS1 to R1 to make it consistent with the neighborhood. The neighborhood needs to be considered. Neighbors often have an opinion regardless of whatever you want to do with a piece of property, and so the rezoning will cause the town to notify all of the neighbors, obviously, so they will be informed through that process. I mentioned the oak tree. There is a large spreading oak on the property. Very likely it would qualify as a specimen tree. Without having a surveyor go out there and do calculations, it appears that it would not be possible to build a residence on the property without probably removing the tree. So I think you need to have that in mind if you move forward. I've already kind of talked about the maintenance. Valuation, we were kind enough to hear from Deb Duvall. She was kind enough to give us a range. It's an estimate. It's a comparables that the real estate industry uses. It's not an appraisal, but she estimates it up to $700,000 for the property and gives some justification for that. And then what are we going to do with the money? Well, obviously to me, there's a direct relationship between the cash coming out of that and your efforts in the resiliency project, because they're also going towards water quality, which was perhaps one of the original motivations in the purchase of the property. And then you may also want to consider dedicating, a certain percentage of it to a tree replacement account. Those are all policy decisions. And then if we once we get past those initial kinds of thoughts, then we could talk about the marketing. I think the marketing can be fairly simple and straightforward. We may need to have like a sealed bid kind of process, which would be fine. I think some realtors are even using that with the way that people are bidding on real estate prices right now. So I think that can be worked out. So that would be my overview. And so if you wish to move forward, then it would be to direct staff to prepare a resolution declaring the property surplus, and direct staff to initiate a zoning change, and direct the staff to return with a marketing and bidding process. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask a very stupid question here. Specimen tree, what's the definition, or how does that?
There's not a definition in the code. It's a matter of judgment, and it takes into consideration size, age, aesthetics, and things like that. But it's all purely judgmental, as far as I can tell from the
Are
code.
there specific rules for specimen trees as opposed to other trees?
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but we could certainly check back on that. I'm not aware of any, so. I've learned more about trees in the last 2 months than I ever thought I would need to. So.
Good.
Okay, I guess we're ready for some discussion. Commissioner Mayfield?
First, with a question, the declaring it's a surplus, what does that really mean besides us saying it's a surplus? Does it go on anything? Is it something like bigger municipalities have surplus properties? What does it really do?
Every governmental entity has a process for doing away with things that the government no longer needs. Let's say
Okay.
you have a car and you buy a new
Okay.
car, so there's a procedure for disposing of the car, and the same is true for real estate, real property as well, so.
Okay, okay.
We do not have anything specifically written into the code for real property, so we would treat it very similar to the way your code is written for property disposal generally.
Okay. I was going to say that I was never a big fan of this when it first came up. I had voted for it to go along with the rest of the commission, and right now, you know, you're just exchanging an asset for an asset. The value of cash is going down right now, and real estate is looking pretty good. So, and we got the ARPA funding. There's a lot more uses for that. I'm not a big fan of this.
Commissioner Campo.
I know that we're all trying to balance financial stewardship with care for trees and care for the river, and it's a balance. I mean, that's why we're here. And these aren't easy choices. I think the timing and the amount of space, I mean, 0.36 acres, I mean, that's almost exactly what we hope to buy at number 78 South Sewalls Point Road for almost the same price for the STA. The timing of the availability, this lot, the value has gone up just like the lot, front part of that lot has gone up as well. I mean, it's kind of worked in our favor. That's what so many people are experiencing right now. Wow, I could sell my house for $1 million, but then, you know, what would you buy? So that's the dilemma, but it's worked in our favor. This is a way for us to take an asset from one pocket, put it in the other pocket. It's basically a lateral move. We've all said that the river is our number one priority, and, you know, how are we going to replace the tree? We can't replace the river, but we can make some steps to mitigate the tree. And what I would recommend is we take 10% of the proceeds of the sale of the lot and to add it to the tree fund that we've had, and to maybe go to the women's, what's it, the club down in High Point?
Satin Tree or something?
Satin Tree Club, or go to a group like that.
Satin Tree, thank you.
And I mean, we did replace some oak on A1A. We've already got some money in that fund. If we could add another $65,000, this would be a way for us to be a little bit more intentional, methodical as far as where the oaks go. If you look at the oak on that tree, and I understand it's kind of a NIMBY thing, you know, not in my backyard, but none of those neighbors have maintained that as a park. And if you look at that poor tree, it's not been handled well. It looks like, you know, an amputee. You know, it just, you know, so, and I would also say, and I'd ask Glenn, would there be anything wrong with a resident of Sewalls Point? Let's say we listed that lot for $700,000. Would there be anything wrong or improper if a resident from Sewalls Point wanted to buy that lot and just not develop it? Would that be illegal? Okay.
Once they buy it, it's their property, and as long
Right.
as they don't do anything illegal with it, they can buy it and
As long as they
hang
don't try
on
to
to it.
change the zoning on it, yeah.
I always get a kick out of people that want the government to do things that they're not willing to do with their own money. That, to me, is called a liberal, okay? And that's not me. We're trying to be good stewards of the assets that we have. And I think that the plan, now, and I want to also ask Glenn this. I thought, you know, 6-8 months ago, we had asked you to initiate the zoning change, hadn't we?
I don't remember. I remember we talked about putting it out for bid. I don't remember if we ever asked to do the zoning change. We talked about it. I really don't remember.
Yeah. I'm really clear because Michelle was against this. She was dragging her feet. I don't know why, but when we finally said, let's move forward, and where there was a consensus with, the mayor at the time, verbalizing, wanting to go along, but having some reservations. I thought it was very clear, well, let's go ahead and at least get that zoning straightened out. So what would that take? I mean, I'm disappointed. I think that was very clear that was done. But what would that take for your office to do? How big of a process is
A
that?
big process. The town actually would initiate zoning change of its own property. It should be relatively easily unless the town objects to the change it's proposing. So
Right.
as long as you don't object to the change, it should be about the easiest zoning change, that you can do.
Right.
And my understanding, I'm not a real estate broker, but the change in zoning, I understand, would increase the value as opposed to the purchaser buying it the way it is, and they would have to then initiate a zoning change, and
Right.
that probably drives the price down.
So when you look at the numbers between this and the project that we're doing with the STA, I think we could actually pay a 2.5% commission, set aside 10%, and purchase the lot, and it would be, to me, a win-win. And I would be in favor of the whole work product that the manager has put together, and that is to follow the recommendations and then to go further, just so I don't have to keep jumping on the mic. I think it's a generous offer for a Realtor to go through the paperwork of expanding the exposure to the MLS service, basically for no cost. So, to me, the things that affect marketability of a piece of property is exposure. More exposure you get, the higher price you can typically get. So I'm in favor of the entire work product and recommendation that the managers put together.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
I agree with what Commissioner Campo has said. To me, it's just a land exchange. That's all it really is. And ironically, one of the emails I got was from somebody who went up to that mic and says, I don't want the tax increase, but yet you're getting $700,000. Even if we wind up after commissions and everything, we keep six-something. It's six-something that the taxpayers don't have to pay. And we've so far been funded on Phase 3, which is Ridgeland to Pineapple, which it's costing us, if we wind up selling that, it's costing us zero. It's just, that's a no-brainer. Then we have to work really on Phase 2, which would be Pineapple to right before Henry Sewell. So if we do that and we get the same results, this project will cost the taxpayers zip. It's just, it's a no-brainer. It's the right thing to do. It's great for the environment. It's going to keep the stormwater from going into the river. This is just part of what we have to do. I happen to agree 100% with what you said, and we need to get on it really ASAP.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I do, to Commissioner Campo's point, I do remember saying we were going to move forward with the zoning change. Also, sorry, I lose my train of thought. My children have been sick, so I have not a good brain right now. Oh, come back to me 1 second. Totally lost it.
I was doing a little thinking about this, and, if we were looking at, let's say another $600,000, and if we, designated this to the, our stormwater retention projects, similar to what we did with the millage increase, when you combine those, that's 600,000 with approximately 300,000, which is what we got from the millage increase, and we look at next year and, the property taxes should be, not the millage rate won't be higher, but we'll probably get more tax revenue because the assessed value will be higher. We might, I'm not promising this, but it's certainly something we ought to think about.
Read his lips.
Something we should at least discuss. We may be in a position to roll the millage rate back to where it was. If we take the 600,000 here, because that 600,000 would essentially be 2 years' worth of what the millage rate increase would bring us. Actually, it'd be even less than that. So I think that's something we could certainly consider. I didn't commit to that. I don't promise to that. but we at least ought to think about it and talk about it. No, that's right, you want to bring it up instead? No, I think it's worth consideration. The other thing is, we did get the, the fairly large grant on Phase 3 that we didn't necessarily, well, we didn't know if we were going to get the whole thing. I don't want to be short-sighted because obviously there's phases after Phase 3.
Yeah, we have lots of phases.
But at the same time, I think it's something we could consider. So I agree, and I think, I'd like to maybe entertain a motion for the recommendation that Mr. Hudson is included in the, well, I'm sorry, let's go back. Did you remember?
I did remember.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was up a lot last night. Sorry about that. I do, believe it or not, I do understand the impetus for selling this, and I get it, but we have a limited amount of land. The town does not own that much, and we have spent so much time on this second phase trying to find land. So I understand right now we don't think we need it, but we haven't even really begun construction on the second phase, Phase 3. So it just seems, again, because it's just exchanging an asset for an asset, it seems like a bit, I'm not trying to change your minds, I'm just saying the argument. It seems a bit much. Plus, I do remember our engineer just kind of referencing that, maybe if subject to sewer happens and you need to put a house somewhere, the town already has land. It just seems like a valuable asset to have. So that's why I'm not supporting it. But I get why you're doing what you're doing. That was it.
More value.
Okay.
So then I will move staff recommendations 1, 2, and 3, and we'll wait for the rezoning process to go with the actual marketing. That would be my motion.
I'll second.
Are we allowed to vote on this?
I think it's a consensus.
Okay.
Consensus? Okay.
We're good.
You said you wanted a motion, so I'm just,
Well, that kind of brings up the,
I teed that up nice for late.
you did, yeah, that's a nice segue, that's a nice segue into 5C. It occurred to me, and I think I'm the one who, I'm sorry, Dan, do you want to start out with this discussion?
Let me find it here. Yes, this was Mayor Tom Peck's suggestion. So the simple question, you have 2 meetings a month. One is a workshop, one is a regular meeting. In theory, you have the opportunity to discuss more detail in the workshop setting. So the question is, do you want to make both of them regular commission meetings so that you can take action? Just a quick scan of last year, about half the time, you end up converting the workshop meeting to a special meeting so that you can make motions and take action steps. So I think from a staff perspective, I don't know that it matters. There isn't a professional standard. This is one of those things that it's truly the governing board's discretion to just do whatever is most useful to you and the community, so.
And I was thinking that, the major difference here is, can we afford Glenn twice a month? I'm not sure if that's possible, but at the same time, we could have a second business meeting, and if Glenn isn't there and there isn't a legal issue, we can just table it to the next meeting. I'd like the ability to be able to vote on things at both meetings.
Yeah.
We have a case where we'll do an ordinance and we need a second reading. We have to wait a whole nother month to do that second reading. We could do the second reading at the next meeting, and that's why I suggested it. And I don't know how everybody else feels about it. It's not critically important, but I wanted to see what the.
I agree with you, Mayor, and I just wanted to run it past Glenn. I mean, how is your schedule? I know you do a lot of municipal meetings. Is that space open on your calendar?
Perfect timing, actually, because they had a 4 o'clock on the second Tuesday, but we have another lawyer that's been covering that. So my wife was very happy. I had Tuesday nights open, but I'll have to tell her, sorry, honey.
Okay, Vice Mayor Kersman?
So all the meetings have to be at 7 o'clock if we have to vote on them?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that requires that. I kind of like the way we have it set up now, but if anybody would like to change the times of the meeting, we'll certainly entertain that. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes. In general, how much of an increase in cost would it be? I mean, I know we're heavy with outside consulting, expenses, and I'm cognizant of that.
I don't know that it'd be that much, because even if I'm not here, Dan and I are then going to talk the next day and go over, and he's going to explain what happened. So you might be saving an hour a month.
Okay.
So, you know.
I asked how much
If-
we would
assuming-
save if we
assuming the
didn't
meeting,
have.
say we're an hour and a half, and we spend a half an hour probably going over it, maybe saving an hour and a half a month, so what is that a year? 15 hours, 18 hours? In dollars, that's probably somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. You're the math people.
Mr. Hudson?
I see you
Not
thinking
today.
about it.
We could still, you know, I lost track of who made this suggestion, but we could still manage it, the content of the agenda, so that the first meeting is still kind of more discussion items, and then the second one is more business action kinds of items, but it would give you the latitude of taking action at any meeting, and so,
And that's what I'd like, and like I said, if we had an ordinance, we could dispose of it while it's still fresh in our mind, rather than have to wait a whole month to do
Yeah.
again.
I think you got the majority. The consensus.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that, and we'll leave the meetings at the same time, 5:30 and 7.
I think that makes sense.
okay. Yeah, we can put that into effect. I think we'll have to amend the meeting schedule, but we need to do the meeting schedule for the second half of the year anyway, so we'll just do the remainder of the year.
Okay, thank you. Any staff comments?
I have a few this week, if you don't mind. So one is the manager search. The Mercer Group is they're on schedule to move things along. They posted the job announcement on the 1st of April, and it closes on April 29th. If assuming that they're able to stay with their schedule, which there's no reason they shouldn't at this point. So you ought to be able to have the first look at the applications in roughly about a month, maybe next 4 to 5 weeks. And again, if it stays on schedule and, you know, no surprises along the way, we'd be looking probably the first few days of June, probably, to be conducting interviews. And so that would be the overall timeline. Just wanted to give you an update. I want to keep reminding people that we're doing this, so.
But you're doing such a good job, man.
Well, yes. I know the challenge is to do a good job, but I don't want you to get comfortable, so. Second thing is, the Florida League of Cities they do awards like many associations do, and so I did file a nomination for the town's playground project. It was kind of on a fast track to get it done, so I went ahead and filed that for, now we'll see how it turns out, but it's citizenship and citizen involvement, so. The third thing I wanted to mention just briefly, we're also going to be making an application for a grant between now and Friday of this week. We're working on it presently. It's with the Indian River Lagoon Council, who awarded us some funds last year. So I'll bring that to you at the next meeting for kind of a retroactive approval. And then last, but certainly not least, this coming Friday is Spring Fling, so,
Yay.
all
What
right.
was the size of the grant?
It's $50,000 to 100. It's not big money, but it all counts, so. And they're fairly easy to work with, so.
Okay, do you want to mention anything about the ribbon cutting?
Sure. That's scheduled for April 28th at 10 a.m. Start here at Town Hall. We've officially got the announcements out and have a nice little graphic to go along with it for everyone. So starting to get responses back. So I did hear that the assistant or the deputy secretary of DEP has said yes to coming. So that's the highest ranking official we've heard from yet.
All right.
Say good things about DEP.
Love DEP.
Any other comments?
I think that'll do it.
Okay, any commission comments? Motion to, I'm sorry.
Just one comment. Thank you, Chief. She just had me look at Muni Code. So your charter says special meetings may be held upon the call of any commissioner. I'm assuming that you're all calling these special meetings from now on the second Tuesdays. Is that?
I'm calling.
I would read it a little bit differently. I would say that there are going to be regular meetings. Is that going to require a change in the code?
No,
Okay,
okay. Regular meetings, there won't be
yeah,
special meetings,
okay.
they'll be regular meetings.
But we'll just manage the two a little bit differently.
Move adjournment?
Adjourned. Thank you.
So what do you want to do?